we are wrapping up our Lenten series on the parables. We're going to be hearing from Luke chapter 15, and this is going to be the tail end of the parable of the prodigal son. Then the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his slaves, "Quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, and it is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called out to one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, Your brother has come home. Your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. You've not even given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." Then the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I had the joy and blessing of growing up in a family where I was the older sibling. I was sometimes the older jerk sibling who'd orchestrate all these horrible ideas to get my younger brother and sister to follow along with me. One morning, probably around 8 or 9 years old, I was taking a shower in my parents' bathroom, and at 8, it was cool to take a shower in there because it had the glass sliding door. It wasn't a bathtub, it was actually a shower. So I'm in the shower, and you know when the bar of soap gets to its very last usage, it's razor thin piece of soap. So me and my 8 years of wisdom are standing in the shower, and I break the soap up into little pieces. And I think it'd be a brilliant idea to then throw these pieces of soap onto the ceiling and make them stick in the ceiling of the shower. Shower's done, I look at my masterpiece, I get out and I dry off and I head back to my room, and about 10 minutes later, I hear this screeching down the hall that says, "Everybody get in this bathroom right now!" So we all come flying out of rooms, freaked out because our mother is on a rampage. So we get into the bathroom and her face is boiling, and she says, "Who threw this soap on the ceiling?" And of course, all of us instantly say, "It wasn't me." And of course I say, "It wasn't me," because I'm scared of my mom. So we all get locked into the bathroom, and she's going to then let us out when somebody fesses up and tells the truth that who threw this soap on the ceiling. So me, once again in my 8 years of wisdom, say to her, "Well, how do we know it wasn't you or Dad?" Now we're locked in the bathroom and somebody has a sore bottom and is crying. So after about half an hour, we finally come up with the plan that we're going to tell to my parents. And here's, in my 8 years of wisdom, here's the great plan we come up with. That my younger brother, Nathan, who's 5 at this point, that Nathan was sleepwalking and came into the bathroom, broke the soap up, and threw it on the ceiling. So we knock on the door to let us out of the bathroom, and she opens the door, and we say, "Okay, here's what happened." And we tell her this amazing story. And of course, she doesn't buy it. So I didn't unveil all of that to my brothers and sisters, that it was me, probably until 6 or 7 years ago when we were sitting around one Christmas and said, "Hey, you guys remember that soap story? That was your older brother." So sometimes being the older brother or the older sibling, it's hard because we sometimes feel like we're the guinea pig. And the rules that were applied to us don't always match up to the rules that were applied to the younger sibling. Because the rules are something that we, as the older sibling, perceived to be standard or to be true or to be the set in stone rule. And that's what's happening in this passage this morning, is an assumption that these are the set in stone standard rules to follow. Now, what we didn't hear of the parable of the prodigal son is beforehand that the younger brother comes to the father and says, hey, I want half of the inheritance and I'm going to take it and I'm going to go. Now, what we don't know is that was almost a slap in the face, because for the older brother in ancient Jewish tradition was promised somewhere around 2/3 of the father's land and money and clothing and animals. 2/3. So this younger brother says, I want half, taking more than what the older brother thought was his, and goes off and wastes it all and then comes back. Now, we hear this story and we always think of the welcoming home of this lost son. Welcoming home of the son who's gone and wasted everything, but then is welcomed and embraced when he comes back to the father's house. And we all like to say that we know who the younger brothers are. In our world, in our community, even in our families, we know who the younger brothers are. And we say if they would only come back, we'd embrace them with open arms. But who are the older brothers? Who are the ones at home waiting and upset that rules were broken? These older brothers think they have God in a box. They think they have an understanding that they could say, here's a start and here's an end to what these rules about how to live life are. And now everyone needs to see it that same way. That's who the older brother is. And this attitude that says you need to do it this way is probably one of the reasons that drove the younger brother to say, you know what? I'm off this team. And I'm going to go off and do my own thing. So the younger brother's gone. Now, this older brother mentality of saying, here's the rules, and here's how we're going to follow, and this is what you need to do, is what made me, at some point in my life, become a younger brother. I went to college in the middle of Kansas, which was not a good idea from somebody from California. And when I got out there, I quickly found out that the older brother mentality out there was that you needed to believe the world was 10,000 years old. You needed to believe that evolution was a tool of the devil. You needed to believe that only people who said this certain prayer were welcome into the kingdom of God. And I didn't follow those rules. So I said, just like the younger brother, you know what? I'm out. I'm off the team. I'm going to go do my own thing. And it wasn't the older brothers who were around me that welcomed me back. It was God calling and inviting me back. And when I finally said, there's something that I'm missing. I'm missing this feeling of home. I want to come back. And there was God with open arms. See, these older brothers who set these rules that say this is how it's going to be done can scare people off. And then these older brothers can then go and do horrible things in the name of thinking they're following the rules set before them. This last week, I don't know if any of you saw this in the news, but World Vision, who feeds millions of people around the world, who puts on the 30-hour famine that my kids at Red Clay do every year, they changed their hiring procedures. Before, they had a line in there that said, if you were going to be an employee of World Vision, you either need to stay in chastity or be married. And married was a man and a woman. Now they changed theirs that said, if you were married in a state that allows same-sex marriage, we will honor your marriage and you can be an employee. So they send this blast out that they're changing their bylaws, and within 2 days, they had to go back and reverse it. People were calling in left and right that said, you can't do this. How can you be a Christian organization and say that you're going to hire people who are married outside of a man or a woman? 2 days later, they changed the position back. When all the dust settled, after 2 days, they lost support for 10,000 10,000 hungry kids that they didn't gain back. That people who supported a kid every month by giving their $32 said, I'm taking my money from your organization, and now 10,000 kids do not have food, shelter, or education. All because their perception of the rules were broken. And that's what the older brother can do. Now, the message of the gospel isn't follow A, B, and C, and you'll get X, Y, and Z. The message of the gospel is follow Jesus. Tony Campolo, who has an organization called Red Letter Christians, says what defines a person as a Christian is having a transforming relationship with the resurrected Christ. Not following rules, not following commands, but having a relationship. Now, in this parable, it's important to know who Jesus is talking to when he first said the parable. And it's the Pharisees. And of course, we all like to say the Pharisees are these horrible people and they get such a bad rap. But the Pharisees get a little bit of credit. And in times of uncertainty, of going back to a homeland that was occupied by somebody else, the Pharisees were the ones who held everything together. And they held it all together in times of turmoil by following rules. But it got to the point where they couldn't see the forest through those tree-looking things that were in the way. Now, Jesus is speaking to these Pharisees, so it's safe to say that the older brothers in this parable are the Pharisees, are the ones who are holding on to these black and white rules. But what's interesting about this parable is that we get a resolution for the younger brother. He's welcomed home and he's celebrated, and the father is so glad that he's there. But there's no resolution for the older brother. We're left with the father going outside of the party that he's throwing to try to invite this brother back in, and the story's over. See, the point of the gospel is to shake your world. If you are listening and following Jesus and the gospel is not moving you every day, you're not following Jesus. I don't know who you're following. In this story, both worlds are shaken and rocked. The younger son who's practicing this line over and over again about how he's going to confront his father, who he assumes is going to be furious at him, comes home, head hanging low, and the father runs out to greet him before a word is coming out of his mouth. And the older brother, who thinks the father, of course, is going to rip this kid a new one, is shaken because the father is so open and willing to embrace him back. The theologian Rob Bell says that the father redefines fairness. It's not that his father hasn't been fair with him, it's that his father never set out to be fair in the first place. Grace and generosity aren't fair. That's their very essence. He goes on to call this profound unfairness. Far too long, the church has been the older brother. Little brothers are scared to come in our doors, are scared to have conversations with us because they assume that these big brother rules and standards are what we live by. The little brothers still want a place that they can come to, a place that they can call home, where grace is actually given and not dangled out in front of them. Now, many of us know the older brother in our lives. Many of us know the little brother. But I hope all of us are both at some points. I hope that we, like the older brother, desire to follow Jesus to a T. That spirit of always wanting to do the right thing. But I also hope, like the younger brother, we get opportunities to fully experience what grace and forgiveness feel like. See, in the parable, the story, there is no ending for the big brother. We don't know what happens next. Does he come into the party or does he stay outside? But it can end for us. We can go inside. We can join the celebration. We don't have to be sitting in our pews, sitting in our churches, upset because someone out there broke rules that we thought God made up. So if you're an older brother, come in. Join the celebration. Join the party. And be family.